Hello and welcome to episode 93, Crafting the Cosmos, the Role of Futuristic Thinking in the Space Industry, Part 1. So, we never really had a very dedicated discussion related to the futuristic thinking or the applications of the future thinking and the strategies, the way it helps the space industry in general. Because most of the times when I speak with the general public, they always think that it is not something that can make things real. But when we look at the science fiction movies, the things that were showcased in Star Wars and several other films, we are today seeing some of those technologies coming to life. So that's, I would say, the stepping stone of what a thoughtful mind can think towards the future and how things can be brought into the action. So today, to take a deep dive into this topic, we have with us Kaori Becerril. Hi, Kaori. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, I'm Car. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you very much for giving your precious time. I mean, I know it's a busy time for the industry. Quite a lot of conferences going on. I myself had to, make a choice between four of the conferences. So yeah, I can understand, but thankful that we got a time to catch up and quickly have this conversation. So before we actually start dissecting this topic, can you briefly tell us about yourself, your journey in the industry, how you basically started? Because from our previous interaction, what I know is like you are an artist or a designer, I would say, not exactly a complete artist, but I would say a fusion of everything. Uh, the kind of individuals we see very rarely in the industry, but you guys are very important. So, yeah, please, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Amkar. Yes, I am a designer. I am an industrial designer from the National Autonomous University of Mexico. So I started my journey into space while I was still a student. I participated, in a couple of uh, university teams or student organizations to start building projects. Those kind of projects that you kind of try to get yourself into to learn more, to do teamwork, and to uh, participate in interesting projects. So I joined an association that was called UNAM Space. It was meant for students to build rovers for competitions. So, well, since I was an industrial designer, I was very well. I was student industrial design. I was very hesitant of being part of those teams because usually it's more about technical work and engineering work. And since that, all the conversations started like, "Hey, will a designer would have a space in the space industry or in space conversations?" So I joined the team. They were very nice and very happily accepted me. And then after a year, I think I became the leader of the group for a time. So it was an interesting experience, and from there I met the first generations of of the students that built Unam Space, and they were a couple of guys who were very forward thinking and pioneers in Mexico, at least, to build startups in space technology development, and especially in specifically on rovers. uh, and they were the first approach of the space industry that I ever had. So I kind of stalked them for a month to ask them if I could have an internship opportunity with them. They were very new into they've just registered their company into the records of the country, so it was just starting everything. um so after that month that I was bothering them if I could join, I just wanted to develop more experience in the space industry. It was something kind of a cool mysterious part that I was looking into. um they really liked my intensity. And yeah, my approach was different. It was not from an engineering point, it was more from a product development point. So branding, marketing, ergonomics, production functionality, and of course aesthetics, as every designer has. um, So I was with the team for like 5 years, up until last year. During that time, I was also introduced to various organizations, and I started to take part or try to build my career as a space designer, let's say, um, outside of the company. So participating in workshops, being part of events from SGAC or the Moon Village Association. I've met in 2021. I think it's when I started to have more of an active role into my professional development.
Yeah.
Um, Participating in workshops, facilitating workshops like with the there was this particular workshop that was just a pivotal time for me. It was a collaboration with the World Design Organization and the
Okay.
ISS National Lab. So this first workshop, it was about exploring the different possibilities for the use of the ISS uh, for different projects that could happen when talking about the sustainability goals from the UN. So it was a very interesting point, and those type of events bring interesting people, and I've got the chance to meet and to connect with many of them. And some of them are still my colleagues. So I later on rekindle to build projects with, or just to have mentors. At the beginning of the career, is just so important and meaningful to have a mentor that you can look up to and you
Absolutely.
can just ask questions. So that was a pivotal moment for me. And then from then on, I started to get more confident in being a creative in the space industry. Um, Coming to some years forward, I've well, in that workshop, I've met Lee Anderson. She's another designer. She lives in the United States, and we connected because I was looking for strategic design methodologies. So this is more of a creative approach into developing strategies for companies. Uh, about products and services that could help improve their position in the market, let's say. So when I reached out to Lee, we were just connecting, like the mindset and the way of thinking. It was very similar. We were very, um, uh, let's say, very like-minded. um, and then I started to learn about this discipline that's called futures thinking. It was something new for me. And I shared with her, like, hey, I'm getting interested in this discipline. What do you know about it? This seems like pretty science fiction for me.
Yeah.
And then, yes, then we share, like, oh my God, we're in the same path. I'm just discovering this discipline. This is very interesting to talk about. Um,
Yes.
and so we started to share articles and organizations that do futures thinking. And then um she was very nice to how can I say it in English, to put me, or to um what's the word,
Provide you the pathway, maybe.
to just kind of
Yeah.
sponsor me as a candidate
Okay.
for organizations. So in
Yeah.
2022, there was this opportunity for a scholarship for futures thinking training. So she gave me her kind of a recommendation for getting this scholarship, and I got it. It was life changing. I had this training which it explained all the technicalities and the formalities and the methodologies for futures thinking and strategic foresight. I was so amazed. Um, I told Lee Anderson about this. We've previously developed some futures thinking workshops for some space events, especially one in I don't know if you're familiar with Ascent conference in
Yeah.
United
Yes.
States.
Yes. I'm aware. Yes.
So I
Okay.
think it was around 2022 when we made the first workshop. It was online, of course. I needed a visa to go to the United States, so I don't have that yet. um, but it was interesting to see the conversation with this mindset of uh, thinking of the possibilities of the future
Yes.
and the consequences of our decisions with space experts. So my mind was blown away by all the interesting um, opportunities and risks that you can get out of these type of conversations. Um, so I I was kind of at the same time doing my design professional career and discovering this new path or world in
Yes.
futures thinking. This training was with the Futures School. They have a natural foresight training. Um, and so I started to also replicate this kind of thinking and this type of tools and methodologies in different workshops around my career, especially with the Mexican Space Agency, which I have with them a very uh, I would not say close relationship. They're a friendly and professional relationship with them. Every time I propose a type of event like this, they're very nice to accept it since it brings different conversations. I was
Absolutely.
invited to make um how was the name of it? An event for girls. It was for commemorating the International Day of Women and
Yes.
Girls in Science, and we made this workshop of futures thinking and the space industry, like how will the space look for in Mexico in 50 years. And the
Yeah.
girls were so crazy with their ideas and they were proposing different projects, and it was so beautiful to see how they were getting involved in developing ideas for the future. And they started to say, hey, then I can be in the future um, a space chef or a space doctor or a space engineer. So they were like, these conversations when you light up the room of
Yes.
little children, and they just tell
Yeah.
you, I want to work on science, or want to work in space, and I can see uh, very various opportunities for me to grow in. And it was so nice to
Yeah.
see. So I started to like go into that journey of converging futures thinking, design, and space
Yeah.
into this merge, kind of.
Interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting journey, I would say. And I think, as you mentioned, the word of the hour. So, briefly, can we also take kind of a look at the definition of basically what does future thinking and strategic foresight mean in the context of the space industry, and why is it basically crucial for the innovation?
Yeah, for sure. So getting into it, futures thinking, it's a mindset of exploring various possible futures
Yeah.
to understand the uncertainty and the complexity of our world. So you take things that are happening in the moment right now, like trends, the emerging technology, changes in social norms, changes in the
Yes.
political context, or shifts in the economy. Um, and Sorry, I lost the connection for a moment.
No,
Um,
it is. Yeah.
And so you take those things and you project them into what could be possibly happening in the future. There's something called signals of the future, so like little windows of things that are happening right now, but you can't project them into what could happen in the future if this signal is going to be uh, available for everyone. For
Yeah.
example, there is a smart toilet being developed, if it's not already
Yeah.
developed, in Japan, that I'm sorry for this conversation, but it analyzes it
I
analyzes
would say it's
yes.
necessary. It's necessary. When it comes to arts, you have to make people uncomfortable. Unless and until it doesn't make you uncomfortable, that's not an art. And It's the cycle of the universe. Unless and until nothing is uncomfortable, there is no innovation. So you're on the right track. Please proceed ahead.
I'm gonna steal that. That's perfect. That perfectly put. I'm gonna thank you.
Yeah.
So so there is this smart toilet that analyzes the residuals that are in there
Yeah.
from the user. So it gathers the information of the minerals and the state of those residuals to tell you about your health. So think of this as okay. So if this is being developed, this is an emerging technology. What would happen in the 10 years in the future when every house has this type of smart toilets? What would happen with laboratories when you have to go to check up on your health? What would happen with connections with other items in your house that could also be smart? And would you be more informed about your health? Would you be more inclined to take some steps of taking care of you? Would you realize that if, very early on you maybe have the risk of something in your body and you can address it instead of waiting for it to develop it further? So this type of different things of what could happen in the future if this is available for everyone, and if this is a future that we like it, or what would be the push of this, what would be the driver of this type of future? So
Yes.
this is kind of the mindset that goes for futures thinking. And a strategic foresight is more of an structural approach. So let's say futures thinking is the mindset, and strategic foresight is the framework or the methodologies, the well
All
defined
right.
approach of the tools that you can use while having this mindset, um, to developing strategies for the future. So maybe kind of a roadmap, or developing the vision. I mean, you can start with the vision of a company. Well, do you use in futures thinking, and with the strategic foresight, you can then develop the strategic uh, steps that you will need in order to get to those futures that you would like to, or the preparations of of possibilities that could be risks or that could be opportunities, and to yeah, thrive with it. So
Yeah.
in order to not there is this concept push and pull of the future. Push is when um you are pushed into the future. You don't take decisions,
Yeah.
you react of the things that are happening around you, and you just get pushed. But if you pull the future, it's like you're taking the driver's seat, and you get to make the decisions in order to pull the future to you. So you kind of have a
Yeah.
leverage, and that's something that we would like to. So you have that power of decision, and power of kind of control about what can we
Yes.
build on. Yeah.
Interesting. And just going deeper into, I would say, on the space tech and the mission side. So how does future design influence the development of new space technologies and missions? And also, briefly, can you also provide, briefly, not, you don't have to extend, basically, I can understand there might be some confidential projects that you might be working on. So can you also provide briefly some examples of the current space projects where futures thinking has played a key role in their success?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So, and I forgot to mention this in the last question. So, this kind of mindset and
Yeah.
interesting approach into decision making for the space industry, uh, it's pretty, I would say, necessary, and it's pretty appropriate since, well, space decisions are from a long term. So sh- uh, things shift so quickly. So when doing a decision in the innovative space industry, in the cool, mysterious, and innovative space industry, we should take into account all the possibilities and all the risks that could happen, of
Yes.
course, but also have a vision of the future. I mean, what do we want to build? If we decide to go on a mission today, why? Why is that? What's going to inform? It's going and what's going to develop further into the
Yeah.
line in 60 40, 50, 60 years into the future. So in terms of futures design, there has been from my experience, there has been approaches of using the futures thinking design and more into strategies for the space industry. So there is you're familiar with the Space Force, right, from the United
Yes.
States?
Yes.
So since 2019, they have been having annually a space futures workshop. So it's not more it's I'm sure that they will have some ideas for future technology development in the space industry, but it's more of an informed uh, workshop where they can get strategic decisions to build the roadmap into the future. So when you build this whole vision of what could happen in the future, then you address how this is an important um, opportunity area to develop technology in order to get to that point that
Okay.
we have further into the future. So that's kind of the mindset of that's kind of the outtake that you will have after doing these explorations of the future. So no more, it's not more like um it's building the future and making the decisions to the future that you want to build.
Yes.
So yeah, there is this also approach in Europe. It was this um report of future scenarios of space explorations for the European Union. It was a collaboration between the oh my god, I forgot the name of the organizations. The Copenhagen Institute of Future and European Policy.
European
Oh my
Space
god,
Policy Institute.
I think so. I'm not sure. I
ESPI.
can I can check the
Yeah.
details for it, but
Yeah. No
yes, there
worries.
was
No worries. Yeah.
this collaborations, and they were exploring what would the future scenarios for 2040 to 2060 for the space
Yeah.
exploration of European. So there was this workshop and this well, not this workshop, it was a whole report, a whole research into what could happen into the future. And I'm still not sure. I was able to interview one of the leads of this project, but from the outcomes they could have a whole spectrum of things that could happen and things that you can prepare on, whether either in the regulatory part, either in the decision making part, either in the development of technology. So this futures design of new technology comes like, you don't only develop a technology that you think that is going to work, you already have a scenario build up, and this scenario comes from trends from the present, and you can envision what could happen in the future and what might be needed in the future, and then you do develop that technology that, and you leverage from those opportunities, or you realize of some risks that could happen, and so you develop technology in order to avoid those risks or address them before it happens. So there is this kind of uh yeah dynamics where
Yeah.
you make your decisions in a very more informed way, your decisions into developing technology and your decisions into making new strategies, new plans, new regulatory systems, and so on. Yeah.
Interesting. And I think you also briefly covered a little bit on the challenges side previously. Before I think stepping into the sustainability and the debris part, can you tell us briefly the difference between futures thinking and the futuristic thinking?
um so the futuristic thinking is more like when we were both saying in the beginning of this sci-fi mindset of
Yes.
imagination. So futuristic thinking is like, hey, I imagine a future like Blade Runner, or there is this
Yeah.
amazing TV series that I love that's called Expanse. Um,
Oh yeah,
uh,
Expense. I haven't watched it. I need to watch it. But yeah, as you
you
mentioned,
have it.
I will definitely watch it.
It's magnificent. It's pretty cool. It comes from books, and the books are very well informed scientifically. So
Interesting.
it's a very interesting projections of what could happen in the future. They made this Earth. It's kind of
Yeah.
a ruled by a world committee, like the UN, for example, and then Moon is part of that infrastructure, but Mars is an independent planet that goes for the military side, and the outer rings of the
Okay.
of the system, like, yeah, between Mars and the rest of the planets, there are the miners, and there's like the working class people, and they're doing a revolution because they don't want to be exploited by Mars and Earth because they get
Okay.
the resources. So this is a very interesting approach to what could happen in the future. So that's a future scenario.
Yes.
uh, but that's the futuristic thinking is something that actually goes very um usual into the minds of people that like you and I, like we go and work for the space industry, just things that we imagine that could happen in the future, but from our point of view, not with the explorations of what's happening right now, but like more like this is wishful thinking, kind of.
Yes.
And futures thinking is a more um pragmatic approach into the exploration of the future. So it's not based on your actual um, wishes. It's
Yeah.
more an exploration of what's happening right now and what could happen from this into the future. So it's like working in a more research way and pointed out way, like more um, um, informed um,
Inform mannered.
projections.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, in
Yeah.
a more informed manner, and more
Yeah.
to project the future. So it's not, sometimes it's actually not what you would like to have or you have dreamed of the future.
Yes.
Sometimes it could be catastrophic. I mean,
Yeah.
there are
Risk
some
mitigation.
workshops. Yes, yes, there have been workshops that I've been part of, and this conversation of this is going to be also very uncomfortable, but um, international conflicts or even wars about resources in space. Um, since they are limited, there was this is future scenario that could happen, since if the tensions keep increasing, and the
Yeah.
resources are so low in the space yeah in the space bodies.
Yeah.
um it could happen a war, and that's something that we need to address. I mean, what can we do to avoid those futures? So, and there are other futures where maybe the space doesn't take up because there are no economical um, support from governments. So there is an stagnation of this space industry, and it doesn't develop further. So those are types of the futures that could happen. That's not what we would like to happen, but that's so explorations of the different possibilities that could happen from the things that we're doing right now. So futures thinking and strategic foresight is not so much about the future, that is about the present. So it's more from the decisions that we make today in order to build that future
Yeah.
that we want to achieve. So there is this the possibility of futures, and they're preferable, the preferred future that you like to go forward. So it's more like
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Interesting. And stepping into the shoes of, I mean, the last part of this episode is, in what ways does future thinking help address issues like sustainability and space debris? Because I believe, if you're thinking about the future, as you mentioned, the kind of risk about the war. So basically, I can say that, futuristic thinking or the futures thinking in general can fall in the risk management category as well. I mean, the people from this sector or this vertical can be the great risk managers, where they can spot the amount of risk. So from that perspective, this question, like how it can I mean, this is a big question. I mean, we can do a special podcast on space sustainability and space debris, but you can answer it briefly,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah.
And yes, as you said, it's a very interesting approach in order to spot potential risks of what could happen in the future. And so this approach, this methodologies make promotes this development of long-term strategies that could address those potential risks found in in these possibilities of the scenarios. So in that ways, it encourages actors in the space industry, stakeholders, to consider sustainability from the early stages, from the decisions they're making now, in order to not um, promote or build that future where space debris becomes a really big issue. Recently, I've made a this workshop from a strategic point with the Mexican Space Agency, and the space experts were also talking about this early consideration of regulatory context and development for not putting um, we're not putting I would not say trash out there, but like managing the risks of sending something to space, and be more mindful of the decisions and have plans for recovering, or this opportunity for business to become the collectors of trash in the future.
Yeah.
And this type of ideas were worked around the room. So definitely from the perspective from risks management, what that you can develop strategies going up into the future to address those issues. And
Yes.
of course, as you said, this is a very big topic that has been
Yeah.
talked everywhere else. But yes, this is a approach that you can also look into when developing these decisions for today, because it could have an impactful way down into 10, 20, 30 years into the future. And
Yes.
what would the scenarios for those decisions would be? What would happen if we have a system of of companies that kind of like are the trash collectors? What would they do with the trash? What the economy would look like? What would be the impactful way of how would say it, connectors, not connect between the companies, connection with the governments? Will it be a service that you
Yes.
provide to people that will have to pay you? Will it be more of a right to have clean skies, or
Yes.
what's happening there? So those type of questions that maybe are kind of difficult to address, or to see from the present perspective, you just project them and see like, hey, this could happen, this could happen. So not only is about being um, aware of the
Yes.
risks of having space debris, and the importance of sustainability, but also the decisions that you're going to make for addressing those issues. What are those decisions going to be impact in the future, going forward? So kind of you make sure and explore those decisions in a very safe environment,
Yes.
because you're just projecting, but you take accountability and you're like, hey, so if we make this, we can impact this, even if we're addressing a challenge that is needed right now, but how can we impact down into the future? So those type of conversations are really interesting to make, that could
Yeah.
help this issue
Yes.
down into the future. Yes, that's in a very
Interesting.
broad way to put it.
Yes, yes. No, absolutely. I think, as I said, this question is specifically a very big one. But yeah, thank you for briefly putting it up and letting the audience know about this. And we'll be continuing this conversation in the episode 94. That's the part two of the episode. So I kindly request the guests to first listen to this episode and then shift to episode 94. Thank you very much.
Thank you.